Hello, welcome back to Talking Leadership. Thanks again for joining me. We are 10 episodes off hitting the magic 100 episodes of the podcast. Again, big shout out and thank you to all those that have helped make the content possible and the excellent and very much experience-based discussions around this thing called leadership. I'm hoping to do a lot more in this space, so keep watching out for the content. Today's podcast guest is Leanne Hardinge. She is the founder and senior service designer for Passions and Profits. A fantastic podcast. It could not have gone better, and you'll find the discussion with Leanne one of those that keeps you thinking about the reasons why people take on roles of leadership, and it really is about service to others. A fantastic unpacking of that in the time that we had, of course. Again, I'd like to thank Leanne for her time. I'll hand over to Leanne, and I started by asking her how she got into this journey of leadership. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Let me start where I start all of these podcasts at the beginning, and why leadership and what were its beginnings for you, Leanne?
I'm a bit older than maybe some of the other people I've noticed that you've introduced. So I'm a 50s model. And so I also too came from the country. And in my particular case, I had a wonderful opportunity that in the good old days, we would all sit round the table for smoko, for breakfast and for lunch, and of course afternoon tea and then dinner. So I came from both sides. I was very fortunate in the fact that I came from a family that had a lot of inventors and a lot of creative people, from farmers through to engineers. And out of that, it meant that our dining room table had a lot of people very passionate, really excited about throwing ideas about, really creative, very, very ingenious, also two great lovers of people. And so out of those conversations, I noticed and really enjoyed the company. I was included in the conversations. That inspired me in the fact that these people had time for each other. They were very clever and they were very encouraging. And so that had an impact, I think, overall on my love of people from all ages and all different nationalities, but also to particularly different career types. As I grew up and got older, I noticed that these very creative, happy, generous people had plenty of time for holidays, had plenty of time for each other, and they freely gave to people, but they weren't always recognised for what they were doing or what they were achieving. There were people not necessarily doing amazing work, but of course they weren't necessarily asking to be paid amazing amount of money because they were thrilled with what they were doing. It also was a bit sad to see that here they were doing these incredibly helpful things for community, organising community groups, being amazing, inspiring leaders and willingly giving to the community, but they weren't necessarily always being paid for that. And then later on, as I went on to work, of course, naturally I was favoured to go into self-employment because the freedom of self-employment was something that I really loved. And I found that when you went into a job, you weren't always necessarily appreciated or able to do the things that you preferred. You'd often answer a job and it would end up being differently to what you had applied for, and not necessarily always giving you the freedom or focusing on what you like to do. What I noticed later on, which had a huge impact, I had personal experiences where these very gifted and talented people in my family, and for example, my mother used to play as a young girl at school, used to be a concert pianist, but she started out playing the music for the old black and white silent movies. So he'd be this young girl up the front of the theatre while everyone's sitting in the dark on canvas chairs or metal chairs and watching a soundless movie. So the impact of seeing those people later on in life, very creative inventors, engineers, as I said, farming machinery. I know that which someone can contest this, but I have seen the patent that was sold when 3 generations ago, a Victorian farmer, part of my family, invented an electric fence to hold their pigs in. But because they weren't necessarily financially astute or knew the value of it because it was something that came easy to them, they didn't have to struggle to solve these solutions or come up with inventions. They didn't get paid for that. And in the end, their business in turn, they sold that patent on. Now, I'm sure the people that patented the electric fence are doing very well. But it's an Victorian invention. But what it drew me to, it's a long story, but what I noticed was that the impact of those earlier years of the happiness, the giving, and working within your strength, to then see later on in life, to see people not paid for their value, to see someone not valued for their, what someone else assumed was not of the same value as someone that was working, building a company, as opposed to someone that was working. So that inequality, to see people that were still very generous, always giving, always donating, the impact on that was to look out, well, that impact was so detrimental, affected their health, and I mean their mental health. And so even though they were making these great inventions, they were very useful community members, they were not always valued, and they were not always treated well either. And so although it didn't affect their attitude, long term many of them were affected mentally, and that had impact on my subconscious, I think, because later on in life, I went in to assist businesses to work as to what I thought was really easy to do, because I'd been raised where you look at where all the bits are that work and how they can work more effectively together, and what you've got in front of you, you can create a solution to a problem using all those components. So I was given this great gift that I did not realise was as important, or that not everyone had, was that it was easy for me to go into an organisation and to put the different pieces, the people, together in a different way to create so that they would all work and function better. And all I was doing was putting people into the position that they were better suited for. Or I recognised that their role that they were doing, or the instructions they were doing, were not the right spots. Now, that basic conversation around a table that influences a kid and a teenager watching these people really enjoy life, really grateful for each other, really excited about helping everyone they could solve their problems, or supporting them to be more creative and encouraging us to do the same. If the family saying was, if you don't ask a question, you'll never learn. And if you can't solve a problem, or you haven't got the answer, it's because you haven't thought about it long enough. There'll just be a way around it. You just got to be more creative. So that led me, without me necessarily realising, into leadership, and in turn into assisting organisations in recognising what parts have they got in their organisation, what are the skills of each individual, and what bits are in the wrong spot, or not needed, or need replacing, or need to be put slightly differently. Maybe they need oiling. So all of those things were very simple things that just led me into leadership. Yes, I am classified as a leader, but my greatest passion is, to be quite honest now, is to spend, as I've worked, more working life than I now have remaining, unless I'm going to live to 130, and perhaps maybe medical science, you can work on that, is the exciting bit now, is working with people who want to be leaders but aren't certain where that direction is or how to do that, or leading and developing leaders to go on to be better leaders. And with that, I can make an impact on how overall organisational culture is run if I'm working with leaders that are excited, or leaders that understand the very basic dynamics of how to get a team together. So that's a very long answer, but the thing that's driven me all my working life is those really great memories of seeing such creative people sharing and just that family spirit, and then later on to see people in environments where they weren't treated correctly, but people weren't recognising what they were doing. So it's been easy to be a leader in those circumstances because it's about something that I really enjoy.
No, that's fantastic, Leanne. That's probably one of the best introductions to why you went down this pathway, and it's quite evident from what you've just said that people matter to you, people's experiences seem to matter to you, and that's led you to being a developer of leaders. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's quite a good thing. We could unpack that for a long time, but I want to lead into the next theme, which you've done quite nicely for me, in that it seems you've had a lot of experiences with people in different organizations that got you to the point where you just said before about helping to develop leaders. Now, can you, based on your experiences, give me, if you think there's a distinction between the leadership and management functions?
I think there is. Gosh, I'm sure plenty of you could give definitions in relation to the difference between a manager and a leader. But for me, there is a clear difference. A leader is someone that inspires willing action. A leader is someone that looks around them and looks at where they can go with innovation. Now, managers do that too, but a leader can be someone who's actually frontline and can lead the whole organisation, but they don't have the authority of a manager, but they have the ability to stir the entire crowd, to stir opinion, to lift motivation, to drive something to change within the organisation. They may not have the authority of a manager, but they don't need it because their leadership is inspiring willing action. And so for me, there's a clear difference. One is not more important than the other. Everybody is of equal value and of equal worth, but they're given different responsibilities according to their skill, their love, their passion, and their desire. And some of those require excellent managers and some require excellent leaders. So I don't want people to think that I'm saying one is better than the other, but leadership for me and management are two different things.
And that's fine. And in that question, and thank you for bringing up the potential underlying bias of the theme. I'm not looking to rank one over the other, and you've brought out the distinction quite nicely. So and this segues into the next theme really nicely, and I knew we would get onto this, but let me ask you this, and I've called this theme the lonely road of leadership. Is leadership a lonely pathway, or is it only as isolating as you make it as a leader?
There's an element of loneliness in all leadership. When there is a time where the leader needs to keep the problems and the issues that could potentially impact on the teams or families or level of understanding, their confidence or their ability to move forward. You wouldn't give children all the details of a massive problem that potentially is danger they're not aware of. I'm a great believer that leaders, and I'm going to premise that because immediately people may default to thinking, oh, leadership is hiding the information. It's not. There are different people prefer just to know what they want and need to know to finish their job for that day. There are others that want to be involved and want to be part of the collaboration and want to know whether it's good or bad. It's not about that. Let's think of COVID-19. Everybody was spending a lot of time on listening to radio. They had stories from family. There was risk. There's financial commitment, perhaps losing homes, not just jobs. We've got children coming home. We're not certain, are we going to all die of this disease? It was a time where leadership was required, where people would, even if they were fearful, when others looked to them for trust, for security, to feel confident, where necessary, you do need to talk to people. A lot of leaders make the mistake, oh, look, I'll just hold all the decisions back and I'll make the best decision for them because I know more. I'm not talking about from that angle. I'm talking about the fact that if you're the leader, it is anticipated that you will take responsibility. You'll understand that even just through the inference or inflection in your voice, you can lift someone up or tear them down. And when people are anxious or they're not feeling confident, then that's the time where the leader is the one that they need. The leader is the one, or the person that's responsible is the one that's giving them some positive encouragement, letting them know, no, yes, it is tough. I'm admitting it's not going well, but we've got this. Not blindly, without logically doing it, not doing it to keep them in the back corner in their thoughts so that they're not involved. This is a confidence thing. So yes, there's an element of loneliness. An element of loneliness in making the decision that you don't share all the problems on everybody. You actually decide that you are going to take responsibility for those and keep them to yourself so that they can get on with their job and they don't have unnecessary worries. To be quite honest, 80% of the stuff we worry about never happens anyway. So talking about it isn't really a good idea.
Yeah, let me ask you this, and moving to something a bit more positive, is how do you measure success as a leader? And I'm not talking for those that you help become more effective leaders. You as a leader, how do you measure success?
I feel it. Can I just say?
What more information, please?
You know, I decided to rebrand, and I went with Passions and Profits, which sounds a lovely, you know, alternative. Perhaps, you know, go sit out under a crystal or something, or a triangle.
No, mate,
statement,
no. I thought it sounded like a really good, what do you call it, retail, like a health drink shop or something.
Yeah, no, Passions and Profits, because it actually comes from a story a long time ago where I met a lady, a nun, and because, you know, I had predominantly worked for not-for-profits, and my passion was I wanted to work for something with a very strong mission. I wanted to feel that my information I'd learned in business was going to be useful, and the best way to do that was to work with community service when I first originally started. I still work for businesses anyway, and to this day. But you asked me, Passions and Profits is the name. It originally came from someone saying to me, a little nun saying to me, look, dearie, no margins, no mission. And I couldn't really name my organisation No Margins, No Mission. So we went with Passions and Profits. And the reason that I got to Passions and Profits is the answer. And I said to you before how I feel. Do you know, sincerely, the greatest buzz that I ever get is knowing that I have said something or encouraged someone, or I've some knowledge I've learnt, or one of those mistakes I've probably made 3 times over to learn it really well, or I've learnt from someone else's pain, or I just had an idea flick in because we were enjoying this wonderful game of conversation and thinking, shivers, you just see the look in their eye, you just hear the tone in their voice, or you see their posture lift, or, you know, a month down the track or 2 months down the track, or I had someone write a review from me for over 25 years ago. I wrote with her and I said, I'm going to write a book. And I said, what, can you think of something that you think I should include? And she said, yeah, I've this saying, this saying, this saying. And she said, what it was is she said, you gave me these things at times where you just said something and it's made a difference, and it's making a difference even now. Do you know what a buzz that is? Like, that is an amazing buzz. No one could give me $1 million would not make me feel better than how that made me feel. And it's not actually something I did, that they did all those leadership things, but it's something that at that particular time we connected. There was a genuine exchange, and at the time, you know it's right because you see it there. But it might take years later till you see a result, but often it's not far away. It's amazing. So the Passions and Profits, if you're passionate about what you do and you stick with it and you love it, guess what? Can't help but make the money.
Yeah, okay. That answers that quite nicely. Look, let me ask you this. It seems that you definitely are people focused, and that's what gives you the buzz to do what it is that you do, which is great to hear. In dealing with and working with and connecting with the leaders and the emerging leaders that you've probably met across multiple different industry settings, and
Yes.
whether it's in blue collar work or white collar work or everything in between.
Yes, I've done those. Yes.
Yeah, wherever that lies.
Yes.
What in your mind stands out, Leanne, as the key leader capabilities that you've seen coming through? That if I had to ask you, I guess it's can be maybe a limiting question, but if I said to you, what are the top capabilities you think leaders need to have to be effective in what they do? What would that list look like for you?
I'm going to start it with, we're not all one type of leader, but I did have the benefit of being encouraged, as I mentioned, to develop in what was my strengths and to not worry about what I couldn't do. And so for me, the core thing is based around the people. And so no matter how much training you get, no matter how many rules, do you know, I admire everyone out there that has spent the years and years and years and have got amazing qualifications and huge vocabularies and had wonderful experiences to influence lots of people. Just astounding how many amazing people there are in this world. But when you do the rules and regulations, but not the people component, then you'll never learn enough rules, because human beings are so complex. We can think one thing and then something can happen to us in a split second. We can completely reverse and then put a bunch of us together that might be doing the same thing. If you're not using a heart-based person-to-person contact. I don't mean soft, I mean honest. If someone can tell that you are working with genuine sincerity, which please remind me to come back to that. When you're talking to someone with genuine sincerity, I would say it doesn't matter what you say. Sometimes you can't stop the pain, but in the end, you can't go wrong. The person has a better chance of surviving if it's really bad news. They'll understand where you're coming from. And if it's good news, you can share in it. But you can pretty well work with anybody that you can communicate with. So one is working from your heart, not, and that's a definition we do not have time to go into, but being honest and sincere. I will just tell you, I worked 16 years. I digress slightly. I worked 16 years out in the bush and just came in, and you can probably tell by the slang, it's not necessarily high-level grammar either. And I came back into Brisbane, and I'd been working out remote anyway. And I said, everyone's talking about, oh, you've got to be authentic and you've got to be genuine. And nearly every person I talked about or I heard on these speeches, and I'd been out not listening necessarily to tapes and whatever. And I said to my daughter, what happened? I didn't hear that when did they stop getting genuine? I didn't realise we'd stopped. So it was a funny thing that people are talking about it, that now we need to have courses about being genuine and being sincere, because wasn't that where we're supposed to be to start with? I just missed the memo somewhere along the line, or the message or the telegraph or the smoke signal, whatever it was. I missed to say that we would drop that. So that's where the heart comes from. The other is for goodness sake, find out what really stirs you. If it's for women, what will make you cry? If it's for men, what would make you go and fight to defend it? Get onto something that you're really strongly opinionated about, or feel strongly about. That's where you should be utilising whatever you do. People will immediately think, oh, I can't do it in the job, I've got no money, that's all. It's not true. There's so many times if you can have a cause, and your job can be displaying that cause. It's just demonstrating it. The other thing is do not work in circles or environments, that's work environments or circle of friends or the news or the TV shows, that are all negative or that are working on what's the worst factor in life, because we're receiving all these signals and eventually that has an impact. And then the core thing that overshadows everything is probably ties into being authentic, but integrity and honesty. Being true, not just, when you say that, integrity and honesty, it actually is to yourself as well. Because you can bluff yourself, or you can decide to deny something. And I know that lots of people think, I've got to keep going and keep working. No, I won't worry about that. But when you put those denials, or you're not honest and value yourself and giving yourself integrity and recognising it, it doesn't matter what you do with anyone else, because it's actually impacts on you internally. That makes a difference to you as a leader, as a friend, as a parent, as a mother, a brother, a sister, a human being. So keeping that integrity. Notice none of those were things about learning, because if you get those bits right, you can go and learn whatever you need, or you can find someone who can do it for you. And so for me, it's going back to basics, really.
Yeah, thank you, Leanne. In your estimation, are leaders born or made?
So I think they're both.
My bet was you were going to say they were made, but all right, so both. Okay, that's
both. Because look at the time where you've seen lots of people that have been in circumstances that have been horrific and really violent and really severe, and they have grown out of that. And look at others who have been born into circumstances and have great genes and generations of family ahead of them that have done amazingly well, and yet they're a bit lost, or they've gone down a completely different path and definitely not become a leader. I think that I've met many people, and I've had the privilege of working with, and if any of them ever hear this podcast, I'm sure they'll add to the comments, that they didn't think that they were leaders. They didn't think they could be leaders. And it just took someone who believed in them, and it just took for them someone to point out the things that were actually good that they'd missed noticing. that's what they would focus on, and they've become outstanding leaders. So I think both, because we're not one sort anyway.
Yeah, it's for me, and I keep looking at the two. I sort of land somewhere in the middle, that I think there's some people you can give the right environment and they will thrive and become ultimately very good leaders, versus some that you'll meet that have got almost like that toolkit given to them at birth. I think misses that big point that you raised, that if you're not those things anyway, then you're not going to be much good as a leader if you can't be authentic and genuine and be true to who you are as a person. And why I say this, and I'm not saying that for a minute that the leaders that I've met are putting up a front or are not being genuine, but I think in the industries that we've all chosen to work in, and I'm speaking only from the industry that I'm working in, the seafood industry, that my mob, the people that I work for and with, have got a very attuned BS radar that I've never seen in a lot of other industries that I've been in. They can pick up someone who's not genuine at the drop of a hat, and that can once that's out, that you're not who you claim to be. Once that gets around, people put up they won't trust you ever. So my advice to young leaders that I've met that have asked the question, well, what's giving you some level of success, is that try and be yourself, and don't create a front for who you are. Just be your genuine self, because if you're not, people that have been around the traps a lot longer than you will pick up on that almost immediately. And in some people, it's hardwired in their DNA that when they meet you for the first time, they're looking to see if they can pick up something that doesn't feel quite right in that interaction. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing that a lot of people in my industry have got that, because that speaks to how you develop trust with other people, but it's also a good way to judge the people that you're working with. And so, and again, I'm not across all of the literature when it comes to being an authentic leader, but for God's sake, if you can't be yourself in a work environment, you have to do something to be somebody else, then there's something not quite right happening there, I would have thought.
Yeah, there is actually a case. Well, it's unfortunate, but right from the early beginning of our education, there is so much TV influence now, and there's so much image influence now from a very young age. I think it's probably going to be more difficult for generations to come to work out the difference, what's really them and what's an influence them. But I would also say I'm not dodging the question of whether it's nature or nurture. I actually believe that we're all different, like jigsaw pieces. We're in a particular picture, but do we have to be one or the other?
Sure. I'm not saying you were dodging the question. I
wasn't implying that, but yeah.
Yeah. No, neither am I.
Just felt prompted to say, but somebody who may be listening may think, oh, okay, she's sitting on the fence.
No, no implications made to anything that you said. No, I'm not making assumptions about anything. Look, let me ask the final question, Leanne, and this one is about you as a leader now looking back, and I was asking this in my initial podcast, and I thank you for drawing me back to this original question, is what would you say to a younger version of yourself about being an effective leader? If you could go back and talk to Leanne at the start of this journey of yours, what would you say? What advice would you give, knowing what you know now, to yourself when you first started out?
The advice I gave you all, which is stay true to what you know yourself, don't alter yourself to be what you think you need to become or be to be useful or of more benefit. I think when I was in my 20s, I did a lot of reading and a lot of studying and had a lot of mentorship and a lot of training, and all of that was around business. Very grateful for that. But one of the core things is I tried to be different things, thinking that's what you had to be in that position, or that's what you had to do to be in that position. And then that didn't work. So then when I went back to working in circles of people who were really genuinely passionate about what it all of a sudden I could just be myself. Then all the creativity came out. I was more relaxed. I was in an environment that was really suited to me. I was really loving what I was doing, and I was being myself. So, yep, don't bother to copy. Just be yourself.
Fair enough. For those listening, I've been speaking to Leanne Hardinge, who is the founder and service designer for Passions and Profits. Look, Leanne, this has been a incredibly eye-opening discussion with you. There's lots of stuff that I could have unpacked, and we could be talking for a long time around this. And it gives me some hope that when I started this little journey of talking to leaders from lots of different industry sectors, that I would find people like yourself and others that can talk about their life experiences being a leader. Because one thing I'm not seeing, let's say the gap in the market that I see, although I don't make money out of doing what I'm doing, but the gap that I see is that there's not a lot of places you can go to listen to people that have been there and done it and can talk about their experiences. And if you are, this is just my view, if you're any good at what you do, being able to listen for 10, 15 minutes to someone like yourself or others that I've spoken to about what their experiences are, if you can take something from that and be better at what you do, or think about what you're doing, or be a bit more introspective, or just listen to someone else's experiences, it makes for better leadership into the future. So this is quite, I'm quite happy that you've given up your time. And so I'm hoping those that are listening, you will listen to Leanne and the many other individuals that I've talked to on this podcast. So I'm Eric Perez from Talking Leadership, thanking everyone for joining me. Thank you again, Leanne.
Thank you very much, Eric. And if I can just also to send my regards to all your listeners, to you and to those you love. I wish you good health, high spirits, and also to every success in all your endeavours. Please ensure you try and stay in something that you love doing. It's not worth it if you stay there.
Yeah,
it's not something you love.
I appreciate the advice. Thank you, Leanne. For those listening, this has been Eric Perez. Thank you again, and I will catch you all on the next podcast.